Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today. I'm Mickey Feldman-Simon. I am the founder of I'm Back at Work, and I'm very excited to have Sharon Stolt here with us today to talk about becoming the CEO of your career. A little bit about me. So I founded I'm Back at Work after taking multiple career breaks and getting back into the workforce. And I'm also a career and executive coach. My background is in HR. And my mission is to help people become the best version of themselves, personally and professionally. So I invite you to join us in this presentation today and become the better manager of your career and move your career forward. And join us in other upcoming webinars or watch the ones that we have online. So before we get started, I want to make sure that everybody can navigate the webinar panel. So your webinar panel may look like the image on the right where it is all closed up, or the image on the left where it is expanded. And to open and close it, you just click on the orange arrow at the top and that will open and close the panel. Also, if the panel is now obstructing the view of the PowerPoint, just click anywhere at the top and then drag it out of the way. Now, in the last 5 minutes of the webinar, we will have a Q&A session. And to ask questions, just click on the gray questions bar, just on top of that, and then type in your questions in the blue rectangle underneath. And we will address all of your questions in the last few minutes of the webinar. Now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Sharon, and I'm going to turn my video camera off so that you can concentrate on the presentation. Here it is. Thank you, Sharon, for joining us.
Thank you, Mickey, and hi, guys. I'm Sharon Stolt. As Mickey said, I work in the field of learning and development, and I specialize in leadership development, communication skills training, and change management. I recently re-entered the workforce as a full-time professional, and now I'm leading learning and development for a software company. But I recently spent the last 3.5 years consulting part-time. When I'm not working, you can find me chasing after my 2-year-old and our golden doodle pup in Boulder, Colorado. I want to be really authentic here and share with you that returning to the workforce has been a huge readjustment for me. So at the same time that I'm teaching you these skills today, I'm also relearning and reapplying them myself. At this time, again, to help you focus on the presentation, I'm going to turn off my webcam, and then we're going to dive right in. So in order to give you a little bit more context about why today's topic is so important to me, I'd like to share my story with you. At one point in my career, I was trying to navigate my first director level role, and it was hard. I was working heads down, never making time to connect, eating lunch at my desk. And suddenly I looked up and all of my internal connections were gone. The company I'd been working for nearly 5 years had undergone a series of leadership changes that ultimately led to more than half of our HR team leaving for new opportunities. Not only was it harder to get work done internally, I realized I'd been so focused on myself that I didn't even know where my colleagues had gone. Thank goodness for LinkedIn, but it'd been months since I'd connected with any of them. And without our regular contact as colleagues, I feared those connections might be gone forever. At the same time, I was working so hard without taking a break that I completely missed how much my role had changed. As I'd taken on the task of launching our corporate university, my work had shifted from a learning and development focus to more of a facilities management role. So I started casually looking for jobs, and I found, to my surprise, that the industry had shifted significantly. The types of roles that had been out there just a few years earlier weren't there anymore. And now they were looking for more technical instructional design experience or broader HR experience that I didn't have. From the outside, it looked like I was successful, but I knew better. I had weak prospects for career development, my allies had moved on to better things, and the landscape had shifted underneath my feet. I decided then and there Never again will I let my career go on autopilot. So what that means to me is I'll prioritize and take the time to nurture my network and maintain broad and deep connections. I'll stay up to date on what's happening in my industry and look ahead to find the necessary skills that are projected to be needed in the future. I'll create regular feedback loops to know what to stop, start, and continue. And I will be totally prepared for career discussions with my boss. I'll be able to clearly articulate my contributions to the company and what I need next for my development. Now, my personal goal is to never have to cold apply for a role again. But regardless of your career goal, in today's webinar, I'm going to take you through the 5 elements of strategic career development that will benefit you in whatever goal you set for your career. My 5 elements of strategic career development are designed around a series of commitments that I've made for myself. First, instead of coasting on autopilot, I take charge of my career direction. And instead of wondering what people think of me, I actively solicit development feedback. Instead of wishing I had the skills, I leverage the 3 E's of development to get those skills that I need. And instead of waiting to find out what's next for me, I proactively position myself for the next career opportunity. Finally, instead of going it alone, I leverage my professional network every step of the way. In our webinar today, we're going to dive into each of these in more detail. And the first step is to do your homework. To get out of autopilot and take charge of your career direction, it's really critical to identify what you want and then align that to what your organization needs. There are a wide variety of self-assessment tools out there. Some are helpful, some maybe less so, but truly the easiest and quickest way to do this self-assessment is to grab a sheet of paper, make a list of all of your skills and talents, and then go down that same list and mark which ones you actually enjoy doing. As a personal example, I'm pretty skilled in Excel, but I probably wouldn't be putting a check mark next to it to indicate that I really enjoy working in Excel. Knowing where those align is a key first step. Once you've got your self-assessment, it's time to do an external analysis, examining what skills are needed in the current marketplace and what skills will be needed at the future, because your career sweet spot lies at the center of these 4 elements. So first, in this external analysis, I want you to examine how your skills and talents align with your company's goals and future direction. Remember, your role inside your company requires you to understand where the organization is headed and how you can help them get there. You are far more likely to get the development opportunities you need if you can show how your work will help drive the organization forward. Second, I want you to consider how you can anticipate what skills will be needed in your industry over the next 3 to 5 years. One of the most important career lessons I've learned is to be regularly evaluating the job landscape to learn how I can stay competitive. So to do this, I regularly take a look at LinkedIn and job posting sites to get a sense of what jobs are out there and what skills they're looking for. Some companies are also starting to publish internally information about critical skill sets needed in each functional area. If you're lucky enough to work for a company like that, I strongly encourage you to take advantage of that unique and excellent information source too. The next step in this strategic career development plan is to get regular feedback from people you work with, from your direct reports, from your boss, and from people inside your network whom you trust. You know, sometimes when we hear the word feedback, we have this visceral reaction. We move into fight or flight mode and we start feeling anxious or defensive or like we want to run in the other direction. But strategic career progression requires that we welcome and invite feedback as a critical way for us to grow. So why do you want feedback? It's so you can identify what you should stop doing that you didn't realize was holding you back, otherwise known as a blind spot, what you should start doing that you didn't realize was important, and what you should continue doing because it's working. The best way to get feedback is to ask for it. And there are 2 questions to keep in your back pocket for any time a feedback opportunity presents itself. The first question is, what am I doing that's working? This will help you emphasize the things that you should keep doing. These are your strengths. The second question is, what one thing would you suggest I do differently to be more effective? Let me say that again. What one thing would you suggest I do differently to be more effective? Now, the reason these questions are so powerful is they make it easy for people to give you feedback. If you've ever found yourself on the other end of a feedback situation, it can be a little bit stressful to answer a broad question like, hey, how am I doing? Or what could I do differently? But by narrowing it down to that one thing, it just somehow feels easier to give that feedback. In a moment, you're going to apply what you've discovered in your analysis and through your feedback to create your development plan. But before we do that, I just wanted to give you about 20 seconds to just do a very quick assignment. Grab a sheet of paper near you or open the Notes app on your phone if you're watching this on your phone and write down as many people as you can think of who would be good candidates to get developmental feedback from. Who could you ask for feedback? Take about 10 more seconds to write your feedback list, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay. Go ahead and wrap up that list. That'll come in handy as we go along. And now what we're going to do is move on to that third element of this model, which is making a development plan. Your development plan should include the 3 E's of development, which you should see here on the screen. Education, which is learning by instruction. Exposure, which is learning by observation. And experience, which is learning by doing. Research suggests that experience has significantly more value on our development than the other 2. But the balance that's right for your plan will depend a lot on whether you need to learn a whole new skill or just need to position yourself to get into the action in a way you never have before. So if your plan requires you to learn something totally new, your development may need something from the education column. You might want to take a training class or do some online learning, read a book, or explore a formal certification program. If what you need is more exposure to something, consider signing up for a task force, and bonus points if at the end you get to present to senior leadership, talk about exposure. Or maybe think about volunteering with your local industry group, especially one where you might meet people who are in roles that you aspire to. Or just ask if you can attend a meeting that you don't normally get exposure to, that will allow you to maybe meet certain people or get insight into certain decision-making processes. What often gets overlooked in our development plan is challenging ourselves to figure out how to get the experience we don't have yet. So push yourself to get that experience however you can. Seek out a stretch task, a special assignment, or a rotational program, or sign up for a cross-functional project. Do some pro bono work. Check out the taprootfoundation.org. You can donate your time and skills there to a nonprofit who needs them. And let's be honest, if your work isn't set up to support you getting the experience you need, you're going to have to get creative. So I recommend you hack on a side project and then write a blog or give a talk or simply publish your results and share what you learned. One of the easiest ways to design your plan is to grab a piece of paper, fold it into thirds, and brainstorm ideas for one of the 3 E's in each column. Then pick the top 3 ideas that are most likely to get you where you need to go next. Now we're going to talk about the best ways to prepare to share your plan with your boss. Remember when I said I'd been working so hard that I didn't take the time to lift up my head and look around? A self-review, which you can schedule in on your calendar, is a great trigger to avoid letting this myopic focus on what you're currently doing prevent you from paying attention to what's happening around you. This self-review is one of the most significant steps you can take to assert your ownership over your career and avoid that trap of waiting to learn from your boss what's coming next for you. As part of the review, I want you to write out your personal contribution statements. Personal contribution statements draw a straight line between the work you've done and exactly why it was valuable. The most effective contribution statements use as much empirical data as possible. What did you do? How did you measure how effective it was? And how did it support the organization's goals by increasing revenue or reducing costs or improving quality or customer satisfaction? Here are a couple examples of solid contribution statements. This first one here, developed and implemented a customer nurture campaign that reduced abandoned carts by 52%, representing additional sales of $34,000 in 3 months. Fits this model that I've listed at the top. I took X action, resulting in a certain number, again, we're hoping for empirical data here, over a certain time period. Let's look at another example. I led the team responsible for auditing the company's internal IT practices. Our recommendations led to annual cost savings totaling more than $55,000. For more on how to write personal contribution statements, especially if your work doesn't naturally lend itself to some of these empirical data-driven numbers, you can visit my blog at sharonstolt.com. So now, armed with your personal contribution statements, discuss your development plan with your boss. Showing how valuable your contributions have been opens the door to asking for the company to invest in your next development step. Now it's time for another quick assignment. This is your last one of our webinar today. What I'd like you to do now is to take just 20 seconds to write down up to 3 contributions you have made in the last few years. This could be to your current company or to a previous company that you think you might be able to support with empirical data. So take a moment to write down up to 3 contributions you've made in the last few years. Take about 10 more seconds to reflect. All right, hopefully you've had a little bit of an aha moment, but again, if not, there's more on this on my blog at sharonstolt.com. I also want to leave you with this insider tip. A great time to do something like this is during the downtime after you wrap up a big project. Listen, you're wiped out, sure, you have very little energy at the end of these, but you're also really proud of what you've accomplished. So you're super motivated and you've got access to the data you need to write those killer contribution statements. At the start of our time together, I told the story of how I neglected my network and how I'm committed to never doing that again. I've committed to taking at least 5 networking actions each month. And right now, I want to encourage you to set a goal for yourself that aligns with your current season of life. Here are a few ideas to get you started. First, one of the most valuable networking actions you can take is to attend an event. Events allow you to build and deepen personal connections, learn about what's happening in your industry, even hear about upcoming jobs in your area. I'm a member of my local Elevate group, and I also follow several industry-related groups on meetup.com to find a good event for myself each month. Remember, it doesn't have to be a formal learning experience. My local industry group does monthly walk and talk meetups that are a great way to build new connections. So far less time consuming is just the quick reach out to a past colleague to say hello or to share a "this made me think of you" note or article. LinkedIn messaging can be a great tool for this, and it's what I regularly use. If you can spare the additional time in a given month, reach out to a connection in your network and suggest a catch-up over coffee or drinks. Or if there's someone in your secondary network, a friend of a friend, for example, whose career path interests you, see if they'd be willing to do a short informational interview with you. Finally, if you invested time in an event last month, take some time this month to follow up with someone you met there. The 5 networking actions I take each month vary based on the time I have available and what's happening locally. For example, I notice the events I'm most interested in have ticked up now that summer is winding down. I'll leave you with this last thought. Don't overextend yourself, but keep a slow and steady pace, and you'll nurture your network well. Today, we explored several ways you can take charge of your career direction and become the CEO of your career. First, assess your skills and what you enjoy doing. Next, assess the external job landscape and what's coming next. Then, get regular feedback by asking 2 simple questions. What am I doing that's working? And what one thing would you suggest I do differently to be more effective? Now it's time to put that all together and make a development plan that leverages the 3 E's of development: education, exposure, and experience. Now remember to look up and see what's happening around you on a regular basis. Do that self-review every 4 to 6 months. Write out your contribution statements and have a career development discussion with your boss. Finally, take deliberate networking actions each month. Set a target between 3 to 5 and keep at it until it's second nature to you. I truly hope these steps have helped you feel more in control of your career progression, and I know they will, and you can start today. I want to thank you so much for your time, and just to let you know that you can connect with me at sharon@sharonstolt.com or find me on LinkedIn. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Mickey, and we're going to open up the floor for questions.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And Sharon, that was an amazing presentation. I think that there was so much valuable information there. And please type in your questions. I also wanted to comment, I love your contribution statements. And I wanted people to think about the fact that these contribution statements, you can use them on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile. It is the best way of talking about your experience in just about any format that you want to talk about it. So
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. These are powerful statements, and you only need a few that align with what you're pursuing to really sell the message that you have the experience and you have made the impact that you want to get across.
I so agree. One question that we already have from Leah, what if my boss is not always available to have these kind of conversations?
Great question, Leah. And it is a challenge, right? Depending on where we are in our roles, a lot of times our bosses are extremely busy. And unless our organization is set up in a way that almost insists that these career conversations happen, it can be difficult to find the time. So my suggestion is first to double check that your boss knows how important your career development is to you, and whether it's through email or at one of your periodic one-to-ones, mentioning that sitting down and having a career development discussion is something you'd like to do. So you're planting the seed. Now, assuming your boss is a good manager who wants to support that, that will open the door to allow you to carve out that time. Truly, you only need 15 to 20 minutes if that's all you can carve out, and you want to let your boss know you're only looking to do this about twice a year. You also can find that natural space to do these career conversations in your annual performance review, assuming that that's what's happening at your organization. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't address the elephant in the room, which is what if I have a boss who doesn't want to have that kind of conversation with me? And my challenge to you is twofold. One, if you're 100% sure that your boss does not want to have that conversation, find someone else. There are people within your company who you could develop connections and relationships with, where you could say, hey, I just want to run my development plan by you. If there's no one in your organization, consider someone in your network. And if there's no one in your network, think about making that your highest priority in building a strong network for yourself. I also want to encourage you to consider whether if you don't have the type of relationship with your boss where you can have a conversation about your own development, I want you to really carefully think about what that means for your career progression and whether that's a sign that it might be time to look at what options are out there for you, if it might be time to do something different.
Thank you, Sharon. Great answer. And I'd like to add a couple of things to it. One, remember that you are the CEO of your career, so you can be the one initiating these conversations. Yeah. And don't wait for those couple of career evaluations throughout the year. Hopefully you have a box where you can have these conversations, sometimes on a regular basis. And if, like Sharon said, your boss is not open to it, sometimes it can be a colleague as well. Somebody who's heard you present, somebody who's heard you talk in different situations, has seen your work, that you can ask for some of their feedback, and that can be a conversation that you could have together as well.
Yeah, great reminders.
While we wait to see if there's more questions there, I want to make sure that people know about I'm Back at Work Facebook group. You can join our group where we get constant tips about different positions that are available, just different reminders to take care of yourself, of your career, and build your confidence. And feel free to connect with me as well on LinkedIn, send me an email. And I think, Sharon, that's it for today. So we have no more questions. Okay. So thank you again for joining me today. I really appreciate this presentation, and I invite you all to join our future webinars as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mickey, for the opportunity to share this with the folks on the line and anyone watching at home. Welcome the opportunity to connect at a later time. Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thank you.